The biggest mistake I made in my business was not hiring a professional to help me with my money. Not just my taxes, but the actual plan I had for my business. I was completely lost on how to handle taxes, what to do with profit, and how to maintain my income. I had to find a better way. That's when I found Core Financial. Core Financial is a team of tax professionals that actually care about building real relationships with their clients. They run my books, keep me up to date with my finances, and make sure I'm taking full advantage of all of my tax benefits. Are you struggling with your finances? Look no further. Core Financial is a brand that is nationwide that can help you with your business. Both Nick and I are huge fans of Core, and they can help you too. Check out howtofilmweddings.com/core to schedule a consultation today. Core Financial, real relationships, no surprises. Hello and welcome to How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn, and today I'm joined by my best good buddy, Mr. Nick Miller. And Nick, today is a great day. We had a very special guest on the podcast, Richard Leng. He's from the UK. He is producing some incredible films. I've been following his work for a while, but we talk about all kinds of good things. But before that, how are you? How's your beard? What's new? What's going on, my friend?
I'm doing really good. I finished the Cabo edit that I had been working on way too much. You know, you get a film and you're just like, I'm done, but then you go back and tweak, and then you go back and tweak again. Anyway, that's how I was. You were probably annoyed with all the times I was texting you, still working on this, you know, whatever. But it's done. It's sent off, and the groom is out of town, so now I have to wait a few days before, because she's not going to watch it until he's back. So that's fun. Anyways, I am doing really good. I'm glad to have that off. I'm glad to have that done. Did you forget we were doing a podcast? You're like, welcome to the How to Film Weddings podcast.
I didn't forget. I just looked at your pretty face on my screen and I got lost in your beard and your eyes. Yeah, it was just like...
Yeah, my beard is pretty full at the moment. Yeah. Like yesterday I went out into public and I was like, ooh, man,
got to trim that sucker back. It looks nice. It looks good.
Might need to. Thank you. But yes, Richard came on the podcast today. Not only do you get to hear his amazing English accent, you also get to learn some pretty good stuff, just talking about how he does pricing and mindset, and also how he uses light and all that stuff. So John, let's just jump into this week's episode of the podcast.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, Richard. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the How to Film Weddings podcast. You are here. You have arrived. Who are you? Where are you from? Tell the audience a little bit about you.
My name is Richard Leng. I'm the owner of RL Films. I'm based in the northeast of England, and it's absolutely boiling today. But it normally isn't. It's normally freezing cold up here in the UK. Most of my work tends to be overseas these days in Europe. And I've been doing this for 11 years now. It was the first wedding I shot was just coming up 11 years ago.
Yeah. So 11 years, you've been doing it for a minute. I found your work a couple of years back and started being a fan of it. Just the way that you do, how you do, how you use light, how you use composition. We'll get into that here in a bit. You said you've been in the UK for 11 years. What is it?
I mean, he's probably, based on his accent, he's probably been in the UK a little bit longer.
That's
a little
true.
bit longer. Yeah.
You've been there at least 11 years to pick up the accent. And last year, pandemic hit. What was that like for you all over in the UK?
This is a strange one. So from a business point of view, it was obviously dreadful. It was catastrophic for a lot of people in the wedding industry. So from a business point of view, it just wiped out the entire year. And I feel really bad for saying this, but from a personal point of view, I found it really useful. And I know that sounds strange, and there'll be a lot of people listening who are, found it really tough. But for me personally, it was just a clean break from a good 3 or 4 years of being very busy to being forced to be not busy at all. And I kind of enjoyed it, if that makes sense. And I know there'll be people who really struggled, but I just really enjoyed the quiet. I enjoyed no backlog. And it put a lot of things into perspective for me about what's really important and what isn't. So there's parts of it. Obviously, I wouldn't want it to happen again. It's for the wedding industry as a whole globally, it was terrible. And not just the wedding industry, obviously, a lot of industries. And it was challenging for a lot of people. But yeah, I kind of found it, I got a lot from it. It sounds ridiculous saying that, but I really did. I guess it just allowed me to rethink the business side of stuff, and what was really important. But we're just coming out of it now, just about. And I'm hoping for the 21st of this month. It was in the press today that unlimited numbers at weddings are possible, potentially by the end of the month. It's not been announced yet by the government, but fingers crossed. But I've shot a few weddings already this year, small ones, and I actually really enjoy them. I enjoy quite small weddings. But yeah, strange year, definitely.
Yeah, and I know that you're right. There are a ton of people that really struggled, and it was really difficult for them. But there's quite a number of people where maybe from a business side it wrecked their business, but from a personal standpoint, like just being forced to calm down and slow down and not work and think of other things and enjoy other things. Like there's some definite benefits from the pandemic if you choose to look at it that way. And I know that John and I have, chosen to look at it that way. We're like, hey, we're in this bad situation. Let's figure something positive that we can gain from it. So I know there are some people like us that feel the same way that you do when it came to what we went through with the pandemic. So you're not alone in saying that. And yes, I know that there are people that have a different experience, and we totally
you can see online if you're part of any sort of Facebook group and whatnot, and there's plenty of Facebook groups supporting that conversation around COVID and weddings and whatnot, and there's a lot of people in very, very, very challenging situations, and I don't wish that upon anyone in business. But again, for me personally, it's allowed me to really kind of step back and think, what can I take positive from this? And a big thing for me was time, just having the time, where you don't have, emails and emails and emails to be getting to. You don't have any editing to do. And you can actually start to rethink why it is you're doing what you do, and kind of reshape the next 3-4 years or whatever. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed it, and I made a lot of pizza, so I perfected my dough. I spent many months eating pizza, which is maybe it's not a good thing, but it tastes good, so silver linings,
The making a lot of pizza, the best worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
To your body?
I'm going with best for now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's okay.
I'm gonna need some of that pizza soon. I'm gonna need to come over and check it out. Richard's Pizza.
Shop opening soon.
So you made some pizza, which is good. You're forced to kind of take a step back, and so many of us were. You said you were able to start to really refocus on different things. So for you, in that time of reflection or meditation or just sabbatical, basically, that we had, this Sabbath, this rest that was kind of forced on us, what priorities shifted for you? Like where are you different now than you were a year ago?
I realized how I really enjoy being at home. Because most of my weddings previously, and actually for the next couple of years, is travel. Quite a lot in Europe, France, Italy. I do quite a lot in Tuscany, and don't get me wrong, I love that, and I love being over there. I enjoy the pace, I enjoy the culture. Obviously, I'm going to enjoy the pizza, but I've realized that actually sleeping in your own bed at night is kind of priceless. So I've started to rethink actually how many weddings overseas I'm going to take on. I think those are one of those things that, when it's on your website and you post it on Instagram and you post links to, some beautiful place in the world that you've been, I think internally, your peers, it's a good thing, and a lot of people, especially starting out, want to do that. They want to shoot in these beautiful places. But I actually think, certainly from last year, that I want to readdress the balance slightly and do a lot more. Certainly a lot more in the UK. I do quite a lot in London, but again, that's still an overnight travel for me. So I've had to really sit down and think kind of the catchment area of where I can, go to a wedding but travel back after it. And also kind of how much I can charge for those type of weddings versus weddings in a different country. So there's been a lot of thought about that balance. But certainly, like I say, from last year, it's the balance. And the balance is really good for me already, to be honest. I only do 15 weddings a year. But I still want to tip that balance to home a little bit more. I enjoy walking the dog. That's what it is. I enjoy walking the dog. I have a pizza oven in the garden. I enjoy, just being... I think I'm just getting old. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. Isn't it? I enjoy the comforts. And spending, more time in an airport alone is not fun, Might look good on social media, but it's not fun. No matter how good the croissants are in the airport lounge, it's still not fun.
Do we have croissant in our airports?
We got them croissants at the restaurant.
So one thing, Richard, one thing that you're saying that I find interesting, and my wife and I, for our business, we're kind of in a very similar situation that you are, is, in 2021, we had one wedding in our local market and we shot it last weekend. All the other 15 that we have are at least 3 hours away. And so I think it's really interesting that you say that, because travel seems to be one of those things that whenever people are first getting started, they're like, oh, I just want to travel. I want to go to this place and I want to go to that place. And don't get me wrong, like it's incredible to go to all of these other places that you're talking about. It's incredible to see these places. But I think that's one of those things that you don't know it until you know it. Okay, I've been traveling for a while and I'm ready to just not. And I know that there's some people out there like, well, Nick, you guys just went to Mexico and you're going to, South Carolina, and next year you're going to South Africa and all this stuff. And like, you want to give that up? I'm like, no, I don't necessarily want to give it up, but I would like to shoot, where I can sleep in my bed at night. That'd be really nice. And so I feel you with that. And one of the things that we have heard, you're talking about, how do I, in my local area, you're like charging and making it work and all that kind of stuff. One thing that we see and we hear a lot in our Facebook group, howtofilmweddings.com/community, if you would like to join it. One thing that we see in our Facebook group is people from the UK, saying that people aren't paying high dollar. People aren't paying money in the United K like they are in the United States. And so is that true from what you have seen in your experience? Or are the numbers skewed, or is it because the pound is worth more than the dollar? Like, it's just different. So what's your experience with that?
So it's less for sure. If you look at, if you're just looking at money, and we're not looking at cost of living, we're not looking at culture, we're not looking at even religion and how important religion is to those countries, or those people getting married. All of those things affect how much somebody wants to invest, basically. You've also got things like, a country's idea of credit and whether you put something on a credit card or not. Like the US probably, from my understanding, is more comfortable doing that than, let's say, the UK is. It's not something that's liked here. It's kind of being in debt isn't a good thing. And I've got a lot of people who are the US. I've got a lot of US clients. I would say a good kind of 40% of my clients are US clients coming over to the likes of Tuscany and Siena and France. And every one of them will always ask, can I pay on a credit card? And I'm no doubt a lot of that is because of security. I've no doubt. So I'm certainly not suggesting that they need to put it on a credit card. But it's just, I think people's feeling of spending a lot of money on something, I think is easier done in the States, let's say, than it is in the UK. I think the UK, I wouldn't say that we're tight. I don't know whether you would use that word over there, but when you kind of, they don't spend a lot of money easily. And we love a good deal. Like, we love a good deal over here. So if you say to a client, like a UK client, that your wedding film is going to be £7,000, the majority, I would say 99.99% of inquiries will probably have a heart attack. They can't believe you charge that much. And I think a big part of that is the average in the UK is probably about 1,500. Maybe a bit more these days, but so if you inquire with 5 videographers, they're all probably going to be around about 15, 2,000, 2.5, something like that. And then one might be 3, one might be 5, 6, 7, whatever. So that person just looks like they're extortionate. I don't think it's anything to do with the value of the pound, or because that's going to change year on year on year.
Sure.
I just think, honestly, that the pot of people or pot of clients that are willing to invest a large chunk of money with their photographer and their videographer is a lot smaller here in the UK compared to the US. But the US is huge. So your pot of people is bound to be bigger. But I think coupled with a more natural kind of comfortableness, is that a word? Yeah, comfortableness of spending more on things that they find important. I think you guys in the US do that a lot more than the UK, and probably Europe in general, to be honest. Yeah, and you can see that even with things like with gear, with kit. So if you look at there's a UK videographer Facebook group, and then there's the Facebook group. There's obviously, you've got your own as well, but there's loads in from mainly American filmers. And the amount of kit that people buy compared to the amount of kit that the UK guys buy is drastically different than what I can see. I bought the last camera I bought was 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago. And I have no intention of buying another one yet, just because another one's come out. But I see quite often there's Facebook posts of, there's buying new audio kit and buying new this and new that, because it's having to have that kind of, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but just that eagerness to spend, I guess, is a lot different over in the US than it is in the States. Maybe we're just tight. Maybe we're just grumpy English tight people who spend too much money on tea and pizza. Maybe. I don't know.
I love this conversation because in our group, I only know, I've been to Europe once. I've lived in America my whole life. And so I only know what I know. And, whenever we started How to Film Weddings and people, it started growing outside of just the borders of our country, and people from all over were like, you charged $12,000 for a wedding. Like, it's just unfathomable. But you are right. There are some, obviously America is a very large amount of people. So you do have people that are willing to spend. You have people that are tight. You have people that are, and so I would say somewhere in America, the average is somewhere similar, $1,500, $2,000 for a wedding film. But there's a lot larger pool of people, maybe 2% to 5% of the people are spending, a bunch on their wedding. And that's the ones that we're all going for. But I love this talk about, like, knowing your market, knowing how people are in your market, knowing how to serve them. And so, we get asked, like, people like, well, in the UK, you could never charge more than £1,000, £1,500. It's just like, it's not going to happen. And whether you're listening from the United States or from the UK to this episode or wherever in the world, I guess my question to you, I know you're charging a bit more than that. And I'm not saying that the UK market will ever match the United States, just with cost of living and eagerness to spend and all these, variables you've said. But when people are in a market, when they're in a market that the brides, the grooms are not paying much, what do you recommend to do to stand out and demand higher prices? And maybe you could talk a little bit about what you charge for what you're doing. But what can people do to stand out? And
so the first thing certainly, if we're talking about people in the UK, and I'm sure this is the same the world over, so this applies to everybody, I guess. But my experience is, working with people in the UK, when we're talking about videographer to videographer within a teaching environment. So I've had people who I've worked with who were adamant they couldn't charge more than £1,000. Actually, it was £750, which is probably, I don't know how many dollars that is, but it's very low. And they were adamant that they couldn't charge more in the northeast of England, because the northeast is a very working class area. And they were just adamant it wasn't possible. And I kept telling this guy over and over, on every time he'd say it on a Facebook post, I would always challenge him and say, dude, like, it's wrong. That is just wrong. I live 30 minutes away from you. And, the highest I've charged is about £11,500 pounds. And it's, my average can be around about 4.5 for the Northeast. So I kept telling him he's wrong. And then it was about 6 months later, I said, look, dude, you need to come to the workshop. He ended up coming. Within a space of a week, he was just under 2,000. And that's what he's been booking ever since. And he's probably due an increase, to be honest. But I think a big part of it is just, it's not the client. I think it's our mindset and our beliefs. And I think maybe going back to what you've said about the conversation about the US versus, the UK, I think that's a big factor. I think, generally speaking, I think the US, I think it celebrates success a little bit more than the UK. I think if this isn't across the board, obviously, but I think in the UK, if you do really well, then it's not frowned upon, but you're not really allowed to talk about it because it's showing off, and that's difficult.
We're in the United States more comfortable with bragging.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's what it is. We like to talk about ourselves and that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna pause you right there. I love this conversation. We need to hop on a quick break, but we're gonna talk about the idea of pricing yourself to grow. You talked about this guy that basically doubled his prices after going to your workshop, and so we want to talk about that, and we will jump into that with Richard Leng of RL Films right after this break.
From Wedditor, we want to thank everyone for the incredible support we've received since sponsoring How to Film Weddings. Yes, we've had some growing pains, but we've had far more wins. And we're doing something that's never been done. We're a remote team of over 50 editors in 10 countries. I often joke that we're as much a logistics company as we are a creative company. Right now, demand is off the charts. And we don't just say yes to everyone and scramble to figure it out. That's why we're asking you to help us help more of you. In short, we're looking for more talented Wedditors. Part-time or full-time, work from where you want, when you want, as long as you hit deadlines and deliver quality. It's a chance to get paid while growing as an editor. Our project managers work with you, explaining why something feels right or doesn't, because there's always a reason. If you're interested, we'd love to hear from you. Go to wedditor.com/editor and fill out our form.
Finding the perfect song for your wedding film can be so frustrating. We spend countless hours searching for the perfect song. When it comes to licensing music, Nick and I both love MusicBed. Not only do they have the best music, but their website makes it so easy to find the perfect song and to find it fast. We have both been using the MusicBed's wedding subscription for years and cannot recommend it enough. Not only are they adding new music from incredible musicians like Chapters, The Light, The Heat, and Tony Anderson all the time, they've made it incredibly easy to search their library for mood, genre, instrumentation, and even key. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to howtofilmweddings.com/musicbed and use promo code HTFW for a free month of a MusicBed wedding subscription. howtofilmweddings.com/musicbed.
All right, we are back from break, and we're going to go ahead and jump into our Wedditor question of the day. Wedditor, more than freelance, more than outsourcing. And Richard, I want to continue on this conversation a little bit about mindset. So you were talking about, this guy that, was saying I can, 750 pounds, and now he's charging 2,000. So what did you say to him, or what were some recommendations that you made to get this person, to open up their thought process of what they could charge and, think a little bit differently? Like, what do you say to someone that says, my market can't handle this price, so I am stuck in this price? What do you say to them?
Well, I think if somebody wants to increase their pricing, so let's start with that as a really broad question. There's so many things that they need to look at first. They need to look at their branding. They need to look at the quality of their work. It could be that the quality of their work is really good for £1,000. And that's it, Mm-hmm. But the quality of people's work these days is quite high. People are putting out some incredible work, regardless of what they charge. So first and foremost, it's understanding actually the type of film that you can make, the type of quality that you can put out, and kind of shaping your brand to be able to sound a certain way, to be able to look a certain way, to aim for a particular type of client, whatever that is. The conversation I had with him, I'll be honest, I'd love to sit here and say that it was a really educated conversation and I used lots of coaching techniques. I didn't. And this is coming from, I'm an accredited coach. I was a coach for 11 years. So I understand all of the questions I would need to ask somebody for them to essentially answer their own thoughts and questions to be able to convince themselves. I know all of that off by heart. That's not really what I did with this guy. I was just kind of forceful. And just said, look, you're an idiot. It's as simple as that. I looked at his work. His work is good. Like, his work is really nice, He understands framing. He understands and uses light really well. And I'm just I basically just tried to make sure he understood that his ideas of what his local area was wrong. And it's just a case of opening his eyes a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I just showed him the type of work I've done in the same locations he's worked locally, and showed him exactly the type of client that got married there versus his type of client. And then we just looked at how much I got charged for that, I got paid for that, and how much he got paid for his. It was literally just a comparison. And so that was the easiest way for me to convince this person that what he was thinking was wrong, because I just showed him the evidence. It was nothing to do with how I felt. It was nothing to do with, some sort of really, thought through kind of coaching process. It was literally, there is your apple, there is my apple. They're both the same. I just got paid a heck of a lot more money for it. You need to start changing the way you think. And I was just constantly, week in, week out, checking in with the guy. And kind of just on social media, just chatting to him, just making sure and dropping him a message. And he would message me and say, he's got an inquiry for this location. And I would say, right, go in at 2,000, or go in at 2,500. And if you need to negotiate down, that's fine. I think there's a myth that, maybe you guys work differently, I don't know, but anyone who charges a really good, solid amount of money for their wedding work, they probably don't have a static price, because there's so many variables that would make me want to take a wedding on for a little less. And I know not everybody's the same. And it's why I don't have a price on my website. That's the whole pricing for growth strategy is you can't go from doing £1,000 weddings to doing £10,000 weddings just because of a rebrand. That doesn't exist. This takes seasons of progressively going up. But while you're going up, you're still going to do those weddings that are only 1,500 or 2,000. You've got to it's just getting that balance up and up. It's a curve. And if you look very closely at that curve, it will go up and down, up and down. But if you just step back, it will be going up overall. And it's just that mindset. I think online, if you guys say, you're shooting a wedding for $12,000, there will be people who think every single wedding you do is $12,000.
Exactly.
And I'm willing to bet that it isn't, mine certainly isn't. I do some weddings I do that are 3 or 4 days long, and obviously they're going to be a lot more money. Some weddings, they're American clients, and they expect to invest a lot more, but they also expect a lot more, I'll be honest. I think it's just about gauging your client before you just send a price list. I think that's the biggest thing. You know, some people think I'm £1,000, and in their head they're £1,000. So they just have a price list. They get an inquiry, they check the date, and they say, lovely, I'm available, there's my price. But they don't even know how much that client was willing to spend because they didn't have a conversation. They just handed out a price, and it usually is a low one, you know. So I would say to anyone listening, kind of rethink how you price. And this is just from my opinion, you know, it might not be right for everybody, but, you know, kind of be, especially when you're moving that brand up to charge more, just be a lot more flexible, you know, and just understand that you're probably still going to do weddings for that smaller amount because you need to pay the bills, right? But open yourself up to the potential of charging more. And the only way to do that is to have that conversation with the client. What do they want from a film? What are they looking for? 5 minutes, 15-minute film? What is it? How many days? Are they having a pre-wedding drinks? Are they having post-wedding, you know, barbecue or something? Then it's understanding what the client wants and needs, and then just selling to that need, basically. And actually, you know, just being braver. That's probably all this boils down to, you know. And the only way you can do that, I've said this so many times, the only way you can be brave with your pricing is if you can afford to be brave. That's it. So if, let's say you have zero money in the bank and your bills that month are £1,000 and it's 2 weeks away to you having to pay those bills, and you get a wedding come in and their budget is £1,000, you're going to do that wedding because you need to pay your bills. But if you have enough money to cover your bills for the next year, then maybe you don't need to take that £1,000 wedding. You know, that isn't rocket science. It's not. You know, it's simple stuff, man. You know, it's just work your ass off, build some security, and then start taking risks. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It was for me anyway. That's it. You know, I shot a 57 wedding year, and it was awful. I was editing, traveling, editing. I was editing while I was traveling. It wasn't the nicest year for, you know, for my social life, for my mental health, for everything. It was just heavy. But at the end of it, I had enough finances to then start being very, very brave with my pricing. And that was it.
Yeah. I think a lot of us business people, you know, John and I have talked about this before, is just, we're not real good at knowing what our numbers are and how much money we need to make and all that kind of stuff. And this year, John's been, you know, we've had our budget kind of sheet for a while and just kind of year at a glance money stuff. And I finally earlier this year, like, started plugging in the numbers, you know, and I see that, and just kind of looking at the year out and how much money I have coming in between, you know, April and December. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, like, I'm going to be okay even if I don't bring in any other money. And so, you know, I actually, this morning I sent off my very first 10,000 plus base quote, you know, to nice. A planner to send off. And I don't think if I wouldn't have known that I'm going to be okay if I don't get that wedding, you know, that I don't think I would have had the guts to necessarily do something like that with that price. One thing that you mentioned about raising your prices and that kind of stuff, and I don't remember what you're calling it, but kind of how you, I don't know if it's like a fluid pricing model or kind of something like that, you know, where you said it goes up and down a little bit, you know, how you do your price. Can you just touch on that and talk about that, what that is and what that means and kind of how you handle your pricing structure? Okay, so I have a price that I don't go below. So that's the only fixed price that I have. It's the one where if it's below that, then I'm just not going to entertain it.
And what I'll do for that number isn't much. It's a short film. It's like a 4-minute film. So that's kind of as low as it'll go. But I'm only going to even tell a client that's an option if their wedding is super off-peak. It's kind of like middle of October on a Wednesday, and it's 10 miles from where I live, I don't even look at that option when I'm in the summer or the spring. It's not even on the cards. But for me, it's about just actually what you've just said. You forecast what's coming in. So this year's a little bit different because obviously we have the back end of COVID. So it's a little different. But let's take this August, for example. Most of my weddings from last year, a lot of weddings actually, they're rescheduled obviously to this year and to 2022. A lot of them rescheduled to August. So I would normally only do maybe 3 weddings a month in a busy month. Like I like to have a weekend off at least. In August, I've got 7 weddings. Now for me, that's like I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I'm looking forward to the weddings, but for me, that's a lot of weddings in a month. That's a heck of a lot of weddings in 1 month. So if somebody inquires for August, let's say I get an inquiry today for the middle of August and I'm available, I don't really want to take another wedding on for August. So I'm going to put out, a price that I'm comfortable doing because I know how much extra it's going to be because of the travel and whatnot. So I need to put a price that I'm happy with. And I have ideas of how that price is going to be. So I start around 3.5 for a short film usually. And I go up to, I wouldn't say it's a package, but I go up to 10. And 10 allows them to have a full 15-minute edit. If it's a multi-day event, then they're going to add day rates on top of that either side of the wedding. So it can go up to like 13,000, 14,000. So a quote that I've just sent for a Nevada wedding, that'll be hot, right? Nevada's hot, I guess. And it's a 3-day wedding in Nevada. So flight times for Nevada from where I am, that's like a long flight.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be there for 3 days on the wedding, for 5, 6. I'm going to be there 7 to 8 days. When you take in flying times, being there early, obviously, location scouting, doing the wedding, kind of, and then coming back, after the wedding. It's going to be about 6, 7, 8 days. So that's not going to be £3,000, £4,000. That's a week's worth of me out of my house, my dog in the kennels, everything kind of on hold at home for a week. So that was a good 15,000 plus. Now I think that's reasonable value. I'm sure there's people in the States that would be, crazy price for that, like really high price. And it's actually quite a lot of work. So for me, it's just, I'm not looking at it from you can't even really call it a strategy. For me, it's just, I'm looking at my schedule, I'm looking at this client, and I'm thinking, right, okay, I'm not just making a number up, I'm not doing that, but I'm going to go between that kind of 3,500 for a short film to 10,000 for a long film. And that's in that core season. That's kind of the prices I'm going to be looking at. But I can be flexible with that, and I think people aren't flexible enough. Again, if it's a midweek wedding, or I might even be in that location on the weekend anyway. Let's say it's London. I could be in London for a wedding on a Saturday and there's a new inquiry for the Sunday. So actually I'm going to be there anyway. So there might be a little bit of flexibility there. And I think it's just about being not as static with your pricing, but also understanding, it's stepping back and understanding your entire year. I think people focus really hard on the price of a wedding. I'm not actually that concerned about the price of one wedding. I'm more concerned with how much am I turning over that year and how much am I profiting from that turnover. That's all I'm bothered about. Because let's face it, there is a lot harder jobs to do. A lot harder jobs for a lot less money. So if I have a goal for the year to bringing us X amount of pounds, then I just balance it with, well, actually, how much do I want to work for that amount of money? And the goal is to work less, obviously, each year for the same amount of money. And that's it. As long as my end goal is achieved, I have little concern about each wedding and how much each wedding is valued at. It's all just part of that end goal for me. As long as I have the balance, that's all it is.
I love hearing just kind of that black and white approach. I mean, I see your films. They're very creative. You use the light really well, composition, and we're going to get into that soon. But like, so many people don't just take a step back and get more of a bird's eye view of their year, of their, their bank account. They're living for the weekend. They're just not even a month ahead in their thoughts, maybe 2 months. But the people that I've seen that have been successful over time are the ones that are thinking 6 months, 12 months, 24 months out, just kind of looking at their calendar at a glance, looking at their budget at a glance. And so you said a couple things in all that. You said a bunch that was really great, but you talked about being brave with your pricing. I think like the mindset has to shift first. And we've been talking about mindset on our podcast, but you have to see yourself as somebody that is charging more before somebody else will pay you more. So that's your mindset first. You got to see it before it happens. But then, like, you can't be brave by just updating your website. If you have £1,000 worth of bills due in 2 weeks, you are going to take the £1,000 wedding. Like, you have to. Like, and that can get you, or you have to take something or do something to get that money because we have to eat. But if you're sitting in a position where you've thought it through, you have 6 months of expenses in your bank account. It's a little easier to send a quote knowing, if I don't get it, it's not the end of the world, and it's actually more appealing to the brides, the planners, if you're just confident in who you are and what your price is. And if you're always like, I'll do this really cheap wedding, you're branding yourself as a cheap wedding filmmaker. And so your mindset has to change. Then you have to like get really comfortable with your numbers, get brave, and then, like you said, yes, I don't take every wedding isn't like a $14,000 wedding, but if you look at the graph over the last 7 years of my weddings, it has gone up in increments a little bit at a time. I'll book a wedding that might be $6,000 or $7,000, but then one that's like $11,000 or $12,000. And so like the average I'm looking at is that end goal of I want to work less and I want to make more. And so whether that's something like I did where I brought on editing help, where this year I took on 18 weddings when I really thought I was only going to take on 14, because during the year I realized I'm just shooting this wedding and I have an editor that's helping me edit. I don't have as much work as I used to for each wedding, so I'm okay with going out to more weddings, and it's different for every person. So I really like how you talked about that fluidity of what you do and how you have a basic number that you can't go under, but then your value, but then you measure it against your current schedule. So that's all really good stuff. You mentioned as well a couple of other things about light, about your composition, about that. I really want to talk about just kind of what you're thinking about and how you're growing as the art side of things. And we're going to do that right after this break.
It seems like there are new cameras and equipment coming out all the time. It gets incredibly confusing and the FOMO is real. Nick and I have been preaching for years that the best way to try out new gear is to rent before you buy. And there is only one place we recommend when it comes to renting, and that is our friends over at Lens Rentals. Lens Rentals is the premier source for renting not only camera equipment, but lenses, drones, projectors, and more. Have a big project coming up and you need to really wow your couple? Wanting to test out the newest camera before you drop thousands on it? You need Lens Rentals. My favorite thing is that if I love something I rent, I can keep it. They apply a portion of the rental fee to the purchase price, and with a few simple clicks, that gear is mine. Check out the latest promo codes and promotions at howtofilmweddings.com/lensrentals. Lens Rentals, the only place we recommend renting.
Okay, we are back from break with Richard Leng, and this has been incredible. I want to finish up any thoughts while we're on the subject of pricing and how to raise your prices and how to be just progressing with your prices. I kind of ended it quickly. Richard, was there anything else you wanted to add to the listeners when it comes to their mindset, with pricing, growing, especially those that are in markets that might not seem to sustain it?
You know what? It's simple for me. It's just be honest with yourself. If there's anybody else in your market that is charging a lot more than you, then that's proof that the market can sustain more than what you're charging. That's just actual proof that it can happen. So you just need to look within yourself and be a little bit more honest with yourself. Is it actually me that's been the one that's in my own way? Am I putting my own barriers up? And that can be from, you can get really deep with that stuff. It could be how somebody's brought up. It could be their own understanding of money. And just learn about money. Just learn about, how to use it better, how to save it better, how to be in business with it better. And just it's just education, isn't it? Just educate yourself around money and your own feelings towards money. And that's all it is, And once you've kind of figured that out, save some money. Stop buying cameras, Like there's people who buy a new gimbal and there's nothing wrong with their old gimbal, or they've bought a new camera and there's nothing wrong with their old camera. There's nothing wrong with that if you are charging what you want to charge. But if you still are not charging what you want to charge, and you don't have that security of 6 months, 12 months, 2 years worth of finances, for me, it's 2 years. I feel more comfortable having 2 whole years of complete finances. And that's what I have. That's, as a business, that's what I want. And that enables me to be brave with my pricing. It could be 6 months for somebody else. If you don't have that 6 months, save up. Stop buying stuff you don't need. Sorry, I keep swearing. But stop buying stuff that you don't need, Get some education around it. Give yourself some space financially to be able to take some risks, and then just take some risks,
Yeah.
And
that
nine
really
times out of 10, you'll not get booked. That's it. You'll just have to be comfortable with not getting booked.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. One thing, as we're talking about, raising prices and having, finances in order and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that helps you do that a whole lot is, being technical and knowing things and how to work your cameras and how to use light and all that kind of stuff. If you guys haven't seen any of Richard's work, go to his website right now, rlfilmsco.com, okay? And just watch some of the work that Richard has on his website, because the lighting that he's using, how he's using natural light and playing with light and all that stuff, it's really, really cool and really great. And I definitely think it's one of those things where, Richard, you have separated yourself maybe from people in your area that aren't charging as much, just based on how you know how to use your camera and how to use your light. So what are some tips, for people that you have picked up on that you could share, just to kind of learn some of this stuff about natural light, or how to use, lighting on the dance floor, or, something like that to make the most of your wedding day?
So before I started video, this was my first camera that I bought. So it's a Olympus OM10, little film camera. I think I paid £30 for this. I still have it. I still use it. I've got a few different lenses for it, and it's still one of my favorite cameras. When you're shooting on film, it's expensive. It's very expensive. The film's expensive. The development of the film's expensive. And after you've shot the first couple of rolls and everything's overexposed, you learn very, very quickly that you need to meter properly and you need to understand how light works, because then you'll actually get some pictures you can look at and enjoy rather than being completely blown out. And that's how I learned how to meter and to understand how light works. When I started really getting into digital work, and again, this was before video, I did a course by Zach Arias called the One Light Workshop. And this was 10 years ago. Brilliant workshop. I'm not sure he does it anymore, but it just taught me off-camera flash with one light. And it was just the understanding of how light works and the exposure triangle, if you move closer to the light, the background will drop off. And it just makes sense now. It's I guess it's probably common knowledge, but at the time when I was just learning, it was a revelation, kind of understanding actually how light works. The closer you are, the further away you are, making a white room look like a black room just because of the light, I thought was amazing. And that's how I learnt light, basically. So the reason I don't use, I only use available light on a wedding day because I work very quickly and I work with minimal kit. It doesn't make sense for me to use lights because I can't travel with lights. You just can't travel in Europe on a plane with lights. They're going to either get lost or get broken. And it's just ridiculous. So everything for me has to fit in a small satchel. So I just learned to use that available light in exactly the same way as I would use this. There's no difference, it's just exposure. So if you put somebody, let's say you're taking a portrait of a bride, the first thing I'm going to be looking for is a window. I love those kind of darker, moodier tones. So it doesn't matter to me whether the room is white. I can make that room look really dark. But it doesn't mean she's dark. It means she's exposed correctly. She's just right next to the light source. So when I'm exposing for her, everything else falls off and looks really dark and moody. And that's just kind of the look of my films. But I think having that kind of overall slightly darker look to my films with using natural light is not the easiest thing to do for me. It's second nature now, but certainly at the beginning it wasn't that easy because you're relying on a certain type of light source or using that light a certain type of way to make sure your image looks that way. And that's just practice, that's just understanding where to stand and making sure the light's coming from the same direction. It's pretty simple stuff, but yeah, it's the natural light stuff for me. That's where I learned it. Zach Arias is the one that kind of taught me through his workshop actually how light works in a camera sensor. It's not rocket science, dude. It's simple. I mean, it's not like I love the fact. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love it when someone says they like my work, or especially a client that says they love how it looks, and like that's great. But even in the workshop, when someone says, "How do you get your image to look like this?" When you show them, they're like, "Is that it?" Really, is that it? And it's like, yeah, this is basic stuff. It really is basic stuff. It's just remembering to apply it every single time you turn your camera on, every single shot you take on a wedding day, having the confidence to apply that technique to everything, rather than panicking and trying to film everything that moves. Actually take your time and film it the way works properly, and just having the confidence to shoot it that way. Some of the dancing I do, the raw footage is almost, you can't even see it. I think one of the first films on the website, the first intro is very, very dark. And it's just where it's a US Jewish couple getting married in Tuscany, in Siena. And the light it was a really, really strong light from the DJ. And they were dancing in this basement. It was pitch black, smoke everywhere from the smoke machine. And then this light that just passed over everybody. Now, most people would walk in there and think, I'm screwed. It's pitch black. I can't see my hand in front of my face. It's that dark. Where for me, I'm thinking, I just need to point my camera at whoever's dancing, basically, usually the bride and groom, obviously. And I just need to be patient enough to wait for that light to pass them. That's it. And a lot of those shots took quite a lot of time to get because when the light's not on them, you can't see them. So you don't even know where you're focusing. So it's just being patient and waiting for that light to pass through them again. And filmed in slow motion, which I do with my dancing. And just those little moments where the bride will lift her head and the light passes her face. And it's the best dancing scenes I've ever shot. And the scene itself was the most horrendous lighting conditions you would ever ask for. But in the same time, used well, it was the best scenario I could ask for. You just need to not panic and be a bit more confident, and instead of looking at the subject, you're actually looking at the light. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really looking at the bride and groom. I'm actually just looking at the light and how it hits the bride and groom. So I'm filming the light. I'm not filming the person, if that makes sense. The person's going to do what they're going to do. They're just going to dance. I can't stop them doing anything. You know, I'm discreet. I'm out the way. Let them do their thing and just focus on the light. See, quite often you see people's shots where the bride and groom are kind of walking along and it's lovely and it's nice and it's a sunny day. But there's stuff going on in the frame that would just frustrate the hell out of me. Because I think sometimes people are so focused on the couple, but they're not focused on the actual frame and what's in the frame. I very rarely, I'm actually not looking at the couple usually when I'm filming. It's not the person I'm looking at. I know they're in focus and I know they're going to do what they're going to do. I'm looking at my edges of my frame. I'm looking at what's coming in, what's coming out. I'm looking at where the light's coming from. So that's kind of my advice. Just, you know, film the light and not the actual subject. Hopefully, if you've got a good enough relationship with the client, they're going to kind of just be comfortable and relaxed, and they're going to do their thing. You know, they're going to hold each other, they're going to chat, and they're going to kiss, and, you know, they're just going to look like a lovely couple that's just got married. I think if you just spend your time just focused on where the light's coming from, where the light's hitting their face, where the light's hitting the bride's shoulders and, you know, her collarbone. Like, I've got a thing about, like, just beautiful light coming across her collarbone. Like, it's such a good shot. And that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at them as a person. I don't know, that maybe make me sound like a creep. I don't know, but yeah, I'm just looking at the light. It's a long-winded way of saying just film the light, basically.
That's really good. No, I'm sitting here listening to you, and it's like, I think that so many people get so focused just on things that they can't control or things like that. And you know, the more that I've gotten, like, it's kind of the same as, like, once you have money in the bank, you can be more confident with, you know, your sales with that. To me, once I know I have some solid shots that are usable, that's when I feel like I can get more brave and get more creative. And like, knowing that, oh yeah, I've got like solid stuff right now of whatever. I just see people, even with details, it's like 40 shots of the dress and 20 shots of the invitations, and it's just like all these things that but like, you can just feel a difference in your work, and you can feel a difference in people's work that, you know, you're a film photographer, so that makes a lot of sense. Like, without having met you, I would have assumed that that's probably what you've done, or at least have experience with that kind of lighting, because of the beauty of the light in your films. And, you know, so like, hearing from somebody that has really good light in their films and talking about why, or what they're thinking about, is very refreshing, as opposed to, you need to buy these big expensive lights. And yes, I have small lights that I bring, but I'm trying myself to have as minimal of a kit as possible and let the natural light do its job for me, different things like that. So it's very refreshing, I guess is the word, just to like hear from somebody that it's not as, you know, scary. It's not as much work as you think. Because I would have assumed you would have brought some types of lights for what I'm seeing on your website and stuff. No,
just I've never used lighting for weddings. I'm not against using lighting.
Sure.
I mean, look, if you have a not so pleasant space where they're doing their speeches and their toasts, it's always good to, you know, if there's many a time I thought, if I had a really nice light, you know, it would make this scene look so much better. But at the same time, my clients are very discreet and very discerning usually. So setting up a big light probably isn't going to make them feel comfortable, you know, so it's a trade-off. And I try and just put them in the best place I possibly can, so at least it looks as good as I can possibly get it, you know, versus making them feel uncomfortable with a big light on. But like you say, there will be people who go out and buy all the equipment. You still need to know how to use it. You know, I could have $50,000 worth of lighting, but I still need to know how to use that light and where to position that light. If you don't know where to position it, it's just going to look like garbage, you know. But yeah, I think weddings are certainly, you know, completely doable with just natural light. You know, it's not for everybody, and some people have, you know, that business model where they bring like all of the gear, and there will be clients who want that. You know, there'll be clients who want the production, and they want a 4-person team with lights and cranes and everything, and that's cool. You know, that's cool. There's clients for that, and there's people who do that. For me, though, it's just a monopod, a camera, and one lens for most of the day.
Incredible.
Simple stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Richard, we are running out on time. I know you have a workshop, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug that if you wanted to, and where can people find you and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the workshop is called Clarity. It's been going for 4 years now. Last year, obviously, we took a break because we couldn't, you know, meet up, couldn't do it. It was going online. I'd prefer it not to. I really, really enjoy in-person workshops. I like the conversation. I like the challenge. I like the conversation of challenging somebody around their beliefs where they think they can't do something. You know, I find that hard to do when it's not in person. You know, it's hard to do when it's just a download. So I'm really, you know, I'm stoked on that happening again this year. It's looking like it's going to be the end of September. So I'm keen on that. So that'll be coming out shortly, or the details will. Website, arrowfilmsco.com. Instagram, just arrowfilmsco, usual thing. Drop me a like and a follow. Drop me a comment saying you want to see more pizza. You know, it's all about pizza right now.
I want to see.
Mate, my pizza's good. My pizza is good. Very good.
Can you send us a photo of your pizza so we can put it on our Instagram in our stories or something at least? Or can you tag us so we can share it?
What I'm going to do, I'm going to make like a pizza bikini for you, and I'm going to stand there and model my pizza underwear.
There's nothing more than I want in my life right now than that photo. Literally.
Well, Richard, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and hang out with us and share your insight on all the things that you are up to. So thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Cheers. Thank you.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do that. If you're listening at home, we want you to head over to howtofilmweddings.com/lensrentals. Right now, we are doing a giveaway where you can win a $100, $250, or $500 gift card from Lens Rentals. As of recording this will be up for one more week. So you have 7 more days to enter the competition. All you need to do is go to howtofilmweddings.com/lensrentals. I did it again. I said Renslentals again. /lensrentals. Drop your name and email in that form, and you will be entered to win a $100, $250, or $500 gift card from our new sponsors and friends, Lens Rentals. John, as always, it has been great to hang out with you. I appreciate you setting this podcast up. I had a good time. Thanks, listeners, for checking us out this week. And until next time, we will see you.
See you guys.
Are you looking for a better way to deliver your wedding films to your couples? Look no further. Our friends over at WedFlow provide the most flexible video delivery solution on the market. WedFlow is pay per project with no large upfront cost or commitment, and you can cancel anytime. Not only that, WedFlow offers a premium viewing experience for your couples, accessible on mobile, tablet, desktop, as well as their very own suite of TV apps. Each project comes with 10 years hosting and an experience for your clients that will blow them away. Stop delivering your films the old-fashioned way and give your couples something to rave about. Head on over to howtofilmweddings.com/wedflow to check out WedFlow today.